Look at this beautiful boat. Today I'm going to do a review on my ultimate, Gheenoe RiverHawk build. I say Gheenoe because it's just like a Gheenoe. You could do the exact same thing with one. If I had one, I would have converted that. But this is what I got. So I'm having to swim while I do this, but I'll give you a full walkthrough here in a minute. This boat is sweet.
Where'er we roam so far from home, to see the world all on our own. Where'er we hear the mighty river roar, adventure waits outside our door. Where'er we stray in the mountain's shadow fair, we all should strive to be out there.
Hello, welcome back to Out There Fishing and Prospecting. I wanted to show you guys this new boat build that I've been working on for over a year, building this. A lot of that was wintertime, and I couldn't work on it because the epoxy wouldn't dry because it was so cold. But what I've got here is a 15-foot or RiverHawk. I think it's only 15 foot, but it's basically a copy of a Gheenoe. So if you have a Gheenoe, or which are much more common than the RiverHawks, then all these mods would work on that too, just almost exactly the same. The boat is just a copy. That is the way it is. But so I've got a 15-foot RiverHawk, and I used on the exterior here, I did all Wetlander paint. So this top coat, this is Wetlander. The interior is yellowish colored Wetlander. I can't remember the name of the color. And then I've got the green Wetlander on the outside, and on the bottom I've got the Wetlander slick bottom paint for like drift boats and that sort of thing. Super tough, and it's the most expensive paint I ever bought. On the front of the boat here, I've got 55-pound thrust, at least I think that's what it was, Minn Kota power drive with the remote control co-pilot edition, because if you buy the electronics, you can modify the old power drives to run the remote control. So I've got that on there so I can do everything with remote control. It's on a quick release mount with a quick release plug, and I can take the whole thing off if I don't want it on the boat for some reason, like I'm going to leave it out somewhere or whatever. I've got dual spotlight running lights like bug eyes on the front here, and of course I've got my red and green navigation lights on there. This nose piece here I built entirely out of fiberglass. I built the entire nose piece. It's almost all fiberglass, but there's a wooden insert up in here to bolt that into. That's completely covered with fiberglass. That opens up. I've got my anchor storage underneath the bow there. Come on in here, you see. And then the original boat had 3 seats in it. It had the central seat and these 2 end seats. You can see the other one down there. And I left those in because that's where the onboard flotation for this boat is stashed. And I don't want to sink if something happens. I didn't want to have to add more onboard flotation, and it's already all built in. So I just didn't want to mess with that. I could have built more storage there, but it just wasn't worth it for me to take them out and then have to just basically replace them. So the decks here I put in, they're plywood with fiberglass on all sides and multiple layers of epoxy paint, of epoxy on them. I've got a stainless steel piano hinge on here, and all the holes were sealed before I put it in to keep water intrusion out of the wood. These hatches are going to get a support so that when I open it, we can't stress that hatch. They've got lockable slam latches on the lid here. The interior of these have channels down them, which should have been bigger, to keep the water out, because obviously when we power up the boat and there's somebody sitting near the bow, it wants to dig a little bit and then splash water into the boat, and it's caused a little extra water intrusion. So I got to fix that problem. Inside the unit here, I've got a 100 amp hour lithium battery, a Noco Genius onboard charger, and my on-off power switch. Okay, moving on here. All the electronics in the boat run through this tube, except for the transducer wire, which goes up and underneath this edge, because there just wasn't enough room to get the plug for the transducer wire down the tube, which was really annoying. I should have made it bigger too. I picked up a Magellan ice box, or insulated fish box, basically. There could be a live well or a fish box, and this is pretty cool because it had dual rod holders on the side, which are not installed right now because I had a strap around it. So I'm gonna have to solve that problem. I put a rubber mat under that to keep it from sliding around or damaging the bottom of the boat. The interior paint on this is just top coat that's got some grit. I purchased some grit to mix in with the top coat from the same company I bought the epoxy from, and I mixed that in. I didn't get my mix perfectly right, so some places are really gritty and some places are not so gritty. And then I did a splash pattern on it with the exterior paint. I've got dual rod holders for 2 fly rods. And I built and installed all the wooden pieces here for these bracing, and then they go through these tubes here in the back to keep the tips protected. The sides of these rod holder pieces here can have storage in them. Right now I've got a casting net in there to be able to pick up bait, and I've got a stand-up paddleboard paddle here in case it gets shallow like it did today and I needed it. This originally didn't have a waterproof hatch on it, but now I've got a waterproof hatch, and that's my dry storage for everything that I really want to stay dry. These ones were supposed to stay dry, but they didn't quite pull that off. This grab handle here has got all of my electronics mounted upon it, and dual
starter button.
Yeah, there's a starter button back here for the motor because it's an electric start motor. We'll get to that eventually. I've got let's trade me sides here. I've got a Simrad Go 7 here, which is really sweet. It's got an idiotic amount of functions that I have not figured out yet. And I've got that on a ram mount so that I can spin it around and be able to see it from the front of the boat if I happen to be standing on the front of the boat. Originally it was mounted on the box and it was a little more compact and clean looking, but I couldn't see it if I was standing on the front of the boat. So my electronic control panel has lighting switches, like you can see the interior lights here underneath these two rails. I have red lights, and including a red light up here for if we're working on the boat at night. And obviously the bug eye lights on the front, and then my nav lights are all on here. And I've got a bilge pump in the back that has an automatic float in it so that I don't have to turn on and off if we really get into wet weather. I don't have to worry about it. It'll just work. Dual rod holders, and then this control console, I did my own wrap on the top here out of paracord, and I've got a GoPro mount on it. And then this control console folds down. You take the two pins out on the bottom, and you take the rods out. And then this control console will fold down and lay flat in the boat if you take the cooler out. And I've got a strap that stretches across the boat that can be supported with. The rear deck is almost exactly the same as the front deck as far as storage and everything. And so I can got my storage here for the lines and that sort of thing. And then I have a 3-gallon Scepter gas tank in the rear here. And then in the rear of the boat, I've got my start solenoid so I could run a remote start off to the front. And eventually, because of the way this is lined up, it's difficult to start and operate the motor because some controls are back here and some are up there. So I'm going to eventually build a mount to have a shifter, a remote, choke, and a start button somewhere on this tiller handle, and that way it can all be right there and I don't have to fight to get to it or anything like that. I've got a Vance jack plate on the rear here. This is their mini jack plate. It was just the most affordable one I could get, and it's made in Tennessee, which is sweet, and it worked pretty well. I did end up, because they come with a 1-inch thick plate unless you want to pay an extra, I don't know, 50 or 100 bucks to get a 2-inch thick one. So I got another piece of plastic to mount my motor on because it wouldn't quite clamp that. And this jack plate can actually go up a whole nother inch if I decide I need it shallower than it currently runs, but it runs pretty good as it is. And then on the back, over on this side, you can see the transducer for the fish finder. That's a 3-in-1, so I've got down scan, side scan, and regular echo transponder stuff. So that's the rig, and it is really sweet. We've been fishing with it for we've been 3 or 4 trips out with it now to kind of work the kinks out and figure out how it runs, and I am loving it. It's a beautiful boat. You just can't do dancing in it because the other person might fall in, or if there's a person standing on the bow and you use the trolling motor too aggressively to turn, the person jumps in the drink because this boat moves fast with that 55-pound thrust motor on it. But anyways, if you want to see the builds for this boat, all the build videos I'm going to put up on my other channel, Dirty Shop DIY, and I'll have a link below in the description, and you can go over there and see how I did individual parts of this. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask below and I'll do my best to answer on what I did or what I used to build this boat. I don't think I actually said it, but this is a 15-horse Evinrude that I got here. I think it's the last generation of this model of motor, and they're super light, and for what the horsepower you get, they're really light. And so everybody says that's the way to go on here. Right now it's not running perfect. I think I've got my prop's a little bit too worn down, and I'm doing about 17 miles an hour on this boat with 2 people on it, which is really not bad anyways. So see you next time on Out There.